Yeah, so formally introducing our first session. My name is Wellington Spetic. I'm a faculty here at Anderson School of Management. I'm also the director of the New Mexico for Good program, which is a multi-stakeholder collaboration for advancing business as a force for good. So we do research, teaching, and we are a convener for change makers in the state of New Mexico. So this is one of the efforts that we do. I'm excited to start this. Again, this is one session of two. We'll do the second one next Saturday. And we have another certificate late January, beginning of February, which we're gonna promote widely after we finish this first one. So that one is a bit more designed to ideation. So if you have a business idea that you want to fine tune and get feedback on, so more on that coming up, but that will be a chance to, see where you are in terms of your business idea for the outdoor recreation industry. Without further ado, idea here is pretty relaxed. So we're gonna have our first speaker. We're gonna have open for questions, but you can jump in at any time if you want. And then we're gonna have our next speaker coming up around 10:15, which we're gonna have a break there, and then she'll finish her part. And hopefully we don't need the whole 3 hours. So maybe we can be out of here by 11:10, 11:15, something like that. Let's see how it goes. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Karen Patterson. Karen is a colleague here at Anderson, a good friend, and a specialist in strategy. So she'll know exactly what to do and answer all your questions. I'll stay on the background here answering chats and taking care of emails, but yes, I'll make sure that everybody's comfortable, I guess. Karen, I made you co-host, so anytime if you want to share your screen, I think you can. But for now, welcome, Karen, and then you can take it from there.
Right. Thank you so much, Wellington. I'm so happy to be here. I think this New Mexico for Good program is such an important thing that we're doing for the state, and it's wonderful to have so much collaboration, particularly with great people like John Mertz and Santa Fe Innovates. So it's wonderful to see so many people who are interested in this industry and interested in making sure that this industry is moving in a positive direction. So thank you all for coming today. Like I said, I know it's a tough day to be inside, so we'll try and make it interesting and very applicable and helpful to you for sure. Just to give you a little bit of background, I am an associate professor here at Anderson. I am a native New Mexican, so moved away for quite a long time, but came back to New Mexico and never want to leave. Love the state, love the people, love the place, and love what's happening and what we're doing here. So I'm excited to talk to you all today about sort of understanding industry. And we're going to speak really broadly. You have some great speakers coming up to talk to you about the industry itself and outdoor recreation. I'm going to focus more broadly on some things for you to understand that might help you with your business. So that's what I'm going to try to do today. Like Wellington said, my area of specialty is strategic management. I do strategic planning, but external analysis is actually what I love. So competitive analysis, external analysis. So I'm really excited to get the opportunity to talk to you all today. And let me just take a quick pulse of the room. You all, I see that some of you know each other from the chat. Do we know each other? Have we worked with each other before? Or is this, Wellington, I know you said this was their first session. So if not, maybe we could do a really quick round of introductions.
Yes, yeah, this is the first session. I know some people in the audience, but I think it would be nice to know everybody since we have a sort of a smaller group. I think if we can stay within 30 seconds of intro for everyone, I think we're fine.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I would be really excited to get to just do a quick introduction of yourself and your business or your organization, if you don't mind. Thank you to those of you that have on your videos, but if you don't want to have it on, I understand. But if you do, I welcome it. Love to see faces. But maybe we'll just do a pass around model, and I'll choose somebody and then you choose the next person until we've got us all done, okay? So I'll start with Sonia, if I can. You're next to me on my screen.
Sure. I'm Sonia Doing. I am a full-time writer, author, and I'm also the Economic Development Officer for Elevated Roller Derby. And with that, I'll pass it on to Ty, who I don't know at all, right? Hi, Ty.
Hi, I'm Ty. I use they, them pronouns. I am serving as the president of Elevated Roller Derby this season. Elevated Roller Derby has been around since 2005. We're one of the resurgence leagues for roller derby. We just had a rebranding, and we're really excited to get back into roller derby after we had to take a break. Ryan?
Sorry, good morning. I think I'm having some computer issues.
Okay, John?
Yeah.
I think I've got that connection.
Hello. How's everyone today?
Doing great.
My name is John Elliott, and I work at UNMLA as the facilities coordinator. I'm also kind of a quasi-inventor. And I don't know if most of you have heard or not, but small two-cycle engines have been banned in California. And barring anyone's opinions, there's a lot of gold mining that goes on out there and here in Arizona. And I have come up with a way to eliminate gas consuming appliances and motors and using solar energy to help people prospect for gold.
That sounds amazing, John. Cool.
Well, I have a product that I want to bring to market, and I think it can bring people to enjoy what I enjoy, and that's getting out in the wilderness. And now I'm getting ready to retire, so I'm looking for a way to supplement my income with my inventions. That's the goal.
What a great way to do it. That's awesome. Do you want to pass it off to the next person?
We got Mike or M.
Hello, guys. My name is Max Kudikov. I do a lot of marketing for different companies here in Taos County. And I also work for the town of Red River here at the Economic Development Office. So I think, this program would be really, really beneficial for me, and I'm really, really excited to be here. Josie?
Hi, good morning. My name is Jessie and my pronouns are she, her. I currently work at a nonprofit focused on health equity. I'm also a trail runner, and I'm just excited to be here to learn more. So, and let me see, I will pass it. Edith, have you gone?
Edith, if you're talking, you're on mute, just so you know. We might be having some connection issues. Let's try Eric. Eric Whitmore. Oh no. Can everybody that I can see, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Eric, what are you doing? Why aren't you answering?
Eric is muted.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I muted and fixing some breakfast. So a little bit of both. Multitasking as usual. So I'm sort of in economic development, sort of a community-based economic development work. And as part of that, doing some work with North Central New Mexico around their next strategic plan. And of course, this really, I think that's a promising place for this kind of effort. So really looking to learn more. And I don't have a great idea of who's gone already. Has Trevor gone? All right, Trevor.
I see that you're unmuted, Trevor, but I can't hear you. Can anyone else? Okay, there might be a mic problem, Trevor. So let's try Laura.
Okay, hello, good morning. Okay, thank you.
Hi.
I'm sorry about my video. It seems to be a little wonky today, but yes, my name's Laura Lewis. I currently work with a group in Albuquerque called Nature Niños, which focuses on providing outdoor education space for homeschoolers. And yeah, I'm also looking forward to seeing the expansion of outdoor recreation in New Mexico. So thank you. And the Anwar, have you gone yet? Okay.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. My name is Anwar Kalin. I'm the Center Director for the SBDC up here in Taos County, and I work with a lot of outdoor rec businesses. I'm an avid hunter and skier myself, and I'm really excited to be here. Shout out to Max up in Red River. You're doing a great job, and good to see everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Trevor, do you want to try again, or Edith?
I can try again.
Ah, gotcha.
My name is Brian. I live in Santa Fe, and I also work in a nonprofit. I'm also a trail runner. I'm also Jesse's husband as well. So we're just in different rooms of the same house. And I'm interested in putting together a business plan, a business model for an outdoor retail business up here in Santa Fe. So.
Great, that sounds great. Wonderful. All right. Anybody else? Trevor, you want to try, Edith? Trevor, I saw you unmuted again, but I still can't hear you. I'm sorry. Hopefully you can hear us though, and you can hear me. And I will, okay, thank you so much. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad that you can hear me, Trevor. So thank you all so much. I love having some idea of who I'm talking to in these things, and Zoom makes it pretty difficult sometimes. So thank you so much for placating me and introducing yourself. So thank you. It sounds like you all have some passion around the area, and it's wonderful to be involved with people who feel that way. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will get started talking about industry dynamics. Is everybody able to see that? All right, great. Okay. So today what we're going to talk about, we have, not a ton of time, but hopefully I'm going to give you an idea of understanding everything that you should be looking at in your industry, which I know sounds a bit daunting, but we're going to try and break it up so you can get an idea of the different areas where you can focus. And also within your own context, think about the different areas where you should be focusing. And so hopefully this is going to be helpful for you understanding your industry and not necessarily the different specific players in the industry, but the different places you should look. And then thankfully, they've done a great job of setting this up with sort of this broad introduction by me And then you have some great speakers that can speak directly to your industry and give you specific examples. So one is actually coming up right after me, and it sounds super interesting. So hopefully it's going to be very helpful for you. Whenever I start any kind of presentation that has to do with New Mexico for Good, I just love this quote, and it's from Michael Porter and Mark Kramer, who you may have heard of. We'll be talking about Michael Porter today and Porter's 5 Forces a little bit. But this is one of the quotes that I love. It's from a series of papers in Harvard Business Review several years ago that really focused on the new way forward for capitalism. And so it's tough. We all are here because we want to do something good. We care about something. And so it can be difficult sometimes to also have that conversation around, we also want to make money, and that's okay. And it's fine. And so what we need to do, and what, at least those of us at UNM are really trying to do, is reframe the idea of capitalism around the idea that it's not just about making money, but you can make money and do well by doing good. And so I love this quote because I think it sort of captures that idea, because not all capitalism is created equal, right? We have such a short-term focus, unfortunately, on profits and stock prices. But if we really think about profits that involve a social purpose, they are significantly more sustainable. They are significantly more impactful, and they do more for our community and then help the community do better as a whole. And so this idea of contemporary capitalism or conscious capitalism, I think, is why, one of the reasons that the SFI was created, and we just echo that and are so happy to partner with them because of that perspective on capitalism. So what we're going to talk about today is understanding your industry environment. So we're going to talk about all the different players in our environment. Some of these are very familiar to you. Some of you are involved in these parts of the environment. We all know that we should pay attention to our rivals. We all know that we should pay attention to our competitive environment, but what else should we pay attention to? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about our general environment. We're going to get very general down to very specific. So, and as I said, you will have some really great speakers throughout this program that I think can help you in your specific industry. This is going to give you ideas of where you should focus, which categories of your environment you can look at, and which ones you should analyze. And then I'll talk just a little bit about using that external analysis to understand how to implement your strategy, because I'm a strategist, so I got to throw it in there somewhere. So that's what we're going to be doing today, and I'll give you some ideas of how to move forward. I did want to say there are a myriad of tools that you can use when you're actually doing internal and external analysis. And if any of you ever want to follow up with me about them, I am happy to talk to you about them. I am happy to provide them for you and give you ideas of where to look for others. So I'm happy to follow up anytime after this. So in terms of moving forward. So we're going to start with this idea of external analysis, and what exactly is that? So our external environment is anything outside of our organization, largely things that we don't control. Okay. So we talk a lot in business about things like leadership and things like strengths and weaknesses. External analysis really looks at what's outside of an organization. So this is where some of you have probably heard the term SWOT analysis. This is where the O and the T in SWOT analysis comes from. Your opportunities and your threats come from this part of your environment. And so we'll take a look at the general environment, which is composed of the political, economic, sociocultural, technological, legal, and environmental factors. And then we'll take a look at the 5 forces, which is more specific to a particular organization. We're also going to take a look at stakeholders. So stakeholders, as many of you probably know, are very different from shareholders. And this has to do with that new version of capitalism, where we're really embracing the idea that our organizations are more than just the owners or the managers of the company. our stakeholders encompass a wide range of groups and people. And so we'll talk about those and maybe where we should focus on those. The reason that it's important to understand these factors are, if you look at the research, roughly 43% and consistently 43% of a firm's profitability is defined by external factors. And so we can make all the wonderful changes we want to within our organization, but if we don't pay attention to what's going outside of our organization, it's very difficult to be successful or effective. And so they are difficult to change. And so understanding them means you can, one, anticipate threats and guard against them, but it also means you can take advantage of opportunities before your competitors might, or you can help others. You can help identify opportunities and help others take advantage of them. So that's sort of what we'll talk about. So we'll begin with this discussion of the general environment. So again, you may have heard the term PESTLE or pest analysis. So that's where this comes from. So when we take a look at our general environment, it's called general because it affects most organizations in the industry in the same way. Okay, so, and again, a lot of you maybe come from these sectors. So we start with things like the political forces in an environment. So political forces are going to entail things like laws that may affect you. So obviously, many of you are involved with government or nonprofit organizations. There are very different laws and political factors that come into play with how much access you might have, with where you might be able to operate. And there are also, obviously, as we've learned this last very weird, wonderful year, that there are sometimes political factors that can really both hinder, but also provide opportunities for our organizations. And so your political factors affect you. And for those of you in this particular industry, this is likely going to play a big role if you are engaging with your natural environment a lot. There's also, from the political environment, you can get things like grants, you can get things, other types of resources. And so your political environment is something that you need to understand, and depending on the type of organization you are, engage with really strongly. Obviously, the economic environment is one that we might have a more basic understanding of. So we know that general trends are what can affect our economy as a whole. With the outdoor recreation industry, for example, this is an industry that, when I was looking at the data preparing for this talk, this is actually an industry that did fairly well consistently during COVID, which, you know, while so many other organizations were just failing miserably, this industry as a whole did fairly well because people were getting outside, right? We didn't want to be stuck inside all the time. And so people actually were getting outside. Again, that's a very broad stroke. So I know some of you may not have experienced that, and others, you know, maybe had a really good experience from it. Other industries that did really well economically during this time were things like cannabis, right? Cannabis grew significantly during COVID. And so our economic environment affects our organizations in different ways. Our sociocultural environment also contains the demographic environment as well. So looking at the outdoor recreation industry, some interesting trends that I saw for this included the increase in people who are older, and as well as more diverse population in terms of race and ethnicity. And so for a long time, in recent years, there's been a lot of discussion about how outdoor recreation is largely a white collar activity because it can be fairly expensive, it can take a lot of time. And so again, one of the potential opportunities we saw coming out of COVID is that more people of color, more blue collar workers were actually getting out and enjoying some outdoor recreation. And so I actually think there's a great space in this industry right now to do something focused on a more low cost approach, because I think that the sociocultural environment is supporting that. So an interesting factor coming out of that. The technological environment, we might think this is obvious, but I'm sure that many of you are involved with different types of technology affecting outdoor recreation, everything from, watches and trail mapping to what's it called? Geo tracking? Is that what it's called? I know that that's a really big thing with people in my area of town. So I know that that can be a big deal for some places. So that technology can help your organization and your industry in a lot of different ways, not only with regards to safety issues, but also with regards to making things more fun, making things more interesting, helping with encouraging competition among participants in certain areas. And so that technology can be important. I see some things going in the chat, so I want to just open it up if I can. Geocaching, thank you, Eric. That is what I was thinking. Yes, so please, everybody, do feel free to jump in if you have a question. I'm trying to have I have the gallery open, so if you want to click raise your hand, please do so, or just jump in and you can interrupt me. That's totally fine too. So if anybody has questions or anything like that, please feel free. So I also see a great question from Eric about if there's data regarding success rates for social impact organizations compared to startups or new businesses in general. So I do know that we have access to some really good data here at UNM. I know that socially responsible investments are generally outperforming more traditional forms of investments. So I have limited knowledge about this in particular. There's also a lot of research going on right now around social ventures, which is a bit, maybe not exactly what you were talking about, but I do think that in general, when you look at the short term and the long term, there's some variance, I think, but I think long term, the data thus far is showing that organizations that do have a social or environmental justice focus, but that are for profit, are doing equally as well. So that's the limited amount of information that I have, but I do think that some of your other speakers may have more on that as well. So yeah, thank you. Great question. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so the other two areas that I want to talk about briefly include sort of the legal part of our general environment. The legal environment obviously is closely tied to the political, but it does have more to do with standing regulations, standing requirements for you and your organization, what you can and cannot do, both federally, but also locally, right? We have some very unique local laws here in New Mexico. And so thinking about and understanding those are very important things to do. And we'll talk in just a little bit about objective setting and how that should play a role in setting up your objectives. I saw just recently, I think, two of our state senators, Martin Heinrich and Vidre Lujan, I think, are working to get a part of the maybe the Gila River. I could be wrong. Trying to get that designated as a wild and scenic river so that there can be some additional protections to that certain part of that river. Those are things that we need to be aware of and understand and know. And so those are, and hopefully take advantage of, for those of you in this particular industry, you can take advantage of it. But also understanding things like urban development and where there are places, certain laws against certain types of activities and which places are more open to them and which places might be a good space for you to be involved. Thank you, Brian, the Gila River, thank you. I sometimes question myself when I am talking. So the last one obviously is an important one for this group in particular, which is your natural environment. So one of the things that is interesting about business and the business literature is that we've really started to recognize that the natural environment is not just affecting things like agriculture. The natural environment is affecting tourism drastically. And so the good thing about that is New Mexico is well set up to take advantage of our natural environment and the, unfortunately, the changes that are happening due to climate change. But some of those changes for New Mexico could actually be really helpful for us. So we, since we are extremely landlocked, we don't have to worry about things like losing beachfront, right? But we do have amazing, beautiful weather, 350 days of the year. We have sun on average. And so we have this wonderful environment that, and a fairly open and supportive state for engaging with our natural environment and taking care of our natural environment. And so that's another area. If you look at, for example, climate change maps, you can see some of the models that we see put New Mexico as one of the few places people are going to want to live in 20 and 30 years from now. And so our state, although dealing with a global climate crisis, there are still, even though that represents a huge threat, obviously, to us as a whole, there are some opportunities that we can take. And while taking those opportunities about what's happening in our natural environment, we can also use that, again, to do good. So we can educate people. We can change people's behavior about how they engage with the natural environment. And some of that obviously is linked to our legal environments, our political environments, and our sociocultural environment, and how we see the natural environment and how we treat it as compared to other states or other nations. So we have some real opportunities moving forward there, I think, both for profit, but also for potential good. So those are what we're talking about with the general environment and the pestle environment. So one of the things that I hope that this helps you to understand and think about is when you're thinking about these general environments, think about, okay, is there something out here that I could integrate into my business or exploit in my business? Are there opportunities from, let's say, the technological area? It's not something that maybe automatically jumps to mind for people in outdoor recreation, but there really are things out there that can make a big difference for your organization. And so going beyond what we normally think or might gravitate to immediately, thinking outside of those areas can really help us reach new customers, reach different kinds of customers, and even a new scope, a new geographic scope for what we do. So that's why I present these kind of the general environment to you. So the next one that we'll talk about is actually the specific environment. So for the specific environment, this is where we talk about Porter's 5 forces. Some of you have probably heard about Porter's 5 forces, particularly if you had a business education. You probably have heard about it nonstop. So briefly, we'll talk about, when we talk about 5 forces, we're really talking about that specific environment. It affects every firm in an industry differently. So when we're talking about firms or organizations, we're really talking about the focal organization. So think about your organization as it is, not the industry as a whole, but your specific organization. So the factor that we most often think about when we're doing our analysis is who are our competitors, who are our main competitors. And this applies for for-profits and nonprofits, okay? So who is competing for our customers, but also who might be competing for resources? If we're looking at grants and funding, who else is in this space trying to either provide the same products or service we do or serve the same customer needs that we do, okay? And so either way, you're gonna have competitors. Now, when you do have this broader social purpose, a lot of times competitors can engage in what's called co-opetition. And so it's working together to try and help each of you serve a population or do something better. And so but this always exists. And so it's important to keep a pulse on your competition, because there are unfortunately limited resources most of the time. And so we have to think about how can we best focus our efforts to get the resources that are most useful to us, most helpful to us. Now, we all know to think about our competitors, but there are other forces in our environment that we really need to focus on as well. So we need to think about, there's always potential competitors. This is an industry that, is gaining in importance, is gaining in relevance, is gaining in interest from a wide variety, all from Gen X down to Gen Z and everywhere in between. You have a lot of rising interest in the outdoor recreation industry. And it's been a great thing for the industry as a whole. But thinking about, okay, who else might want to come in here and take up some of this space and therefore take up some of our profits, or serve some of our customers, or serve some of our population that we're trying to serve in a different or better way that we might be able to work with them. So think about who might come into this space and how might that affect our organization. And again, threats and opportunities both come from all of these areas, okay? Now, some of you are, if you do have specific goods that you're providing, you're going to have suppliers that you need to get those goods from. Even if you don't, even if you're a purely service organization, which I think most of you are, there's still going to be suppliers that you're going to need. So particularly for organizations and for people like you who care about our natural environment, particularly, and hopefully New Mexico as a whole, you're going to be concerned about suppliers and how environmentally responsible they are, how socially responsible they are. And so looking at understanding the power that they have, we know that 55% of people are willing to pay more to get products or services from a company that has a social or environmental justice mission. And so we know that. If that's true for those of you in this session, it should also be true for you as buyers. And so think about how you can maybe use that and exploit that fact to then help you, one, do good, but also get better, higher quality products and supplies that you need. At the same time, on the other end of the coin, you have buyers, right? And so you have buyers or customers that you're trying to serve, or a population that you're trying to serve. And so you have somebody that you're trying to meet their needs, whatever that is. Now, if there's only one of those where you are, they have a lot of power over you, right? If you have a wide and vast population that you're serving, the individuals might not have a lot of power over you, but they might be more diverse and more heterogeneous. And so it's harder to meet their needs because you can't specifically know what all of them want, and you might not be able to address all of their needs. And we'll talk in just a minute about how that might impact your strategic decisions. We also have substitute products. So outdoor recreation is a great one for substitute products, because substitute products are organizations that offer not a product or service in the same industry, but they serve the same customer need. So outdoor recreation, substitute product for that, we could go to the movies. We could go to Dave & Buster's, right? And again, one of the reasons that outdoor recreation has done well in the last couple of years is because those substitute products, a lot of them were not options for a while. You couldn't do indoor dining. You couldn't do the movies. And so that actually was, even though as a whole, right, this has been a very dark time in our history, this has been an opportunity for certain industries. We know that. The last one are complementary products. So complementary products are included. I like to include them because it's important to understand that there are products or services, particularly for this industry, I think this is very relevant, that aren't in your industry, but you kind of need them to operate, right? So you need other organizations that might help with things like transportation, other organizations, including maybe funders or grants, organizations like anything that might provide products or services that you need in order to make your company or your organization run well. And so these are things to also, what are some things that you really need that, people or your customers, they want to have or need to have in order to take advantage of your products or services that you're offering. So the quintessential example of this is hot dogs and hot dog buns, right? You don't buy hot dogs without buying hot dog buns at the same time. And so that's the quintessential complementary product. But we also see it in technology, obviously, as a big one. We see you don't generally buy a tablet without also having headphones or chargers or other accessories. So things like that are some concerns. So within the specific environment, this is going to vary for each organization. And I know, just from our quick introduction, there was a wide diversity in here in terms of organizations, all the way from for-profit to nonprofit to government organizations. And so this varies widely, but it's important to understand these different categories and the different opportunities and threats that are presented within them. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to a discussion of stakeholders and who stakeholders are and the different categories of stakeholders as well. There's so much to say about stakeholder analysis and how important it is, particularly for organizations who are trying to have a social purpose and an environmental purpose. So it's going to be brief, but again, I'm always happy to engage with you further if you would like to. I wanted to talk a little bit about, first of all, we know what shareholders are, right? These are the owners of the company. This is, for a long time in capitalist societies, we've talked about the shareholder primacy model. And in reality, we are largely still structured this way in the United States. If you take actions that are not in the best interest of your shareholders as a top management team, you can be sued. You can lose your job because you cost them money. Now, the beauty of B Corp certification, which is something we worked with SFI as well, and that is new to New Mexico, is you are able to, if you are organized as a B Corp, you can actually make choices that might not be in the short-term interest of shareholders, but they are actually focused on social or environmental justice issues that actually make our communities a better place, which in the long run, we know, and years of strategy research have taught us this, in the long run, short-term losses focused on things like improving community development, economic development, are almost always worth it. Almost every time they are worth it. And so organizing as a B Corp helps get us out of the shareholder primacy model to the stakeholder model, where we look at all of these different categories of stakeholders, and you can see there's a lot of them. So some of these are a little more obvious, and so I'm gonna go briefly over them, but I did want to sort of focus on a few because I know sometimes we're not necessarily always sure what we're talking about with these. And so when we're talking about governments, obviously, we know that there are federal regulations, there are also state regulations, but again, pay attention to those local ones as well. When you look at something like your customers, again, for some of you, that aren't for-profit organizations, they're not necessarily customers, right? But they are a population that you serve or are trying to help. And so understanding who exactly is it that's the focus of our work. Social action groups are one that, particularly for industries like yours, can be a great partner for you. So looking at, again, you'll have somebody talking to you later about the industry and your specific industry factors, but looking at organizations like the Audubon Society, what a great partner for a lot of you, right? We have a very active Audubon Society here in New Mexico. And so partnering with them to get people to come and use your products or your services or engage with you in some way gets you visibility, but it also gets you potential customers. So there's obviously a lot of these different social action groups out there, and they can be a great partner for you. Another one that that again isn't always super clear is trade associations. So you have a great speaker right after this from the Outdoor Recreation Industry Association. And so this is exactly the kind of organization that can be really beneficial when you're looking for specific information for your industry. So these are the types of organizations that are going to have guidance. They're going to have resources for you. They're going to have research. They're going to let you know, hey, these are, maybe they've done some of this external analysis for you. So they know what's going on in your industry, and they can be really helpful to you if you can find good ones. So I'm really excited for you all for the next speaker. I'm excited for you all to have access to that, because that can be a really great resource that you don't always get if you're not really involved with the organization. And so this, I think, is going to be a great resource for all of you. Political action groups can also be great partners. And so, oftentimes political action groups can present some threats for sure to organizations and businesses, but they can also be amazing partners. So for example, the Conservation Voters New Mexico has a political action group that really focuses on trying to take care of our natural environment within a perspective that isn't only about taking care of it for hunting and fishing, but also for people who don't engage in hunting and fishing. And they're not anti those things by any means, but they do recognize, outdoor and wilderness and being outside, and even urban, our urban natural environment. All of those are important for all of us to engage in. And so they encourage the election of officials who care about those types of things. And so again, when you go through a stakeholder analysis, it's really easy to identify your shareholders most of the time. It's really easy to identify certain government organizations that you may interact with, but there are all these other stakeholders that can serve as great partners for you, that can serve as great resources for you. So take a look and see, what are the other stakeholders that I can engage with that can help me, that can help my organization and help our communities as a whole. I see that we're running a little bit short on time, but I really wanted to take this. I see that there's a question from Brian on cooperative business models in New Mexico and the legality of their status. Okay, so I am not in any way, shape, or form a legal expert. This is not my area of expertise, but I will say that there is a lot of research being done that focuses on cooperation among competing organizations. There are a lot of other models that can be extremely useful when you're talking about integrating suppliers, but not actually vertically integrating in terms of buying your supplier or buying your buyers. So vertical integration can present some problems in terms of antitrust issues, which have to get pretty big, obviously, but they can present some problems. But cooperating with suppliers, cooperating with buyers is a very a much more, I think, progressive method of engaging with our communities to hopefully help the different players in our value chain to do well. And we know that if we maintain those relationships, particularly in a small state like New Mexico, that again, that can help build our communities. So while I think the basic thing, the legality issue can be problematic when you talk about horizontal or vertical integration. But in terms of cooperation, I think it's definitely a more progressive business model that can, again, have really good long-term outcomes. So I hope that helps, but maybe if you would like more information, I might be able to reach out to some of our business law professors and talk to them about it as well. So please feel free to follow up with me. So I want to talk a little bit about your specific organizations. And so I know this is really on understanding industry dynamics, but I also think it's really important to understand our industry dynamics within our particular organizations. Okay, so it looks like a lot of you have already defined your organization. So you know what you do, you know what you want to do. Like Wellington said, in the future, there will be an ideation session that hopefully, if for those of you that are interested in, creating a new business, like John or Eric, I really hope that you take advantage of that. But these are some things that you might learn there. But there's some things to think about as well for now. So first of all, I'm sure a lot of you, again, have heard of these things: having a business vision, having a mission, having your goals. All of those things are, unfortunately, they sometimes get reduced to platitudes, right? The idea of a vision and a mission this helps us enact our daily activities. So when we look at a vision, oh, what a cute kitty. Sorry. I have my dog sitting here next to me, so I like seeing other people with their animals too. So when we talk about our organizations, again, a lot of times people will say, oh, well, our vision is to be the best in our industry ever in the world. Okay, that's not a very helpful vision. What I like to think of for your vision is, if you go on a road trip, where's your end point? Where do you want to get to? And that doesn't mean you're done. That doesn't mean your business is dissolved at that point. But you want to think, where do we want to be? So do we want to be the premier provider of this particular type of service in the state of New Mexico, in the Southwest? Do we want to maybe think about improving our communities and how we might do that? So thinking about a vision is, where do you want to be? Where do you want your organization to be 5-10 years in the future? This is very future focused. So this is your destination point. In contrast, your mission is, what do we do now? So who are we and what do we do? And a lot of times in for-profit organizations, people say, well, we want to make money. No, your mission is never to make a profit. Your mission is, what do you do to make a profit? Why would somebody pay you for what you do? We all know we all want to make money. That's fine. We're in business. But what are you going to do to make money? Why should somebody pay you for what you're doing? And so what is the unique value that you add for your customers or your community? And we'll talk a little bit how we define that in the next slide. But overall, when you talk about strategy, you need to think about specific decisions and actions that match what you can do as an organization. And that is the knowledge that you have, the resources that you have, the value that you provide, match those with those opportunities and threats that come from all those different sectors of your environment that we just talked about. And so can you, given that this is your environment, what can you do really well to deal with that? And how can you add value to the people that you're engaging with, whether those are your customers, whether those are your citizens, or other businesses? So think about, how are we going to do that? And how can we match that? Now, when you get to that point, some things that you can do: carve out your space. So take a look at your external environment and then think, okay, we've got our vision. We know where we want to go. We know who we are and what we want to do. Let's have a very clear objective for the next 5 years. And this is very different from your mission, right? This one, mission statements, they don't have specifics. They're not measurable. It says, this is the value we provide to our customers. This is what we do. For objectives, you're going to think more about a specific goal that you want to get to that is going to help you achieve not only your mission on a daily basis, but also get to that vision. And so that might be, we want to have increase our market share by 35%. We want to serve 50% of the businesses in our geographic region. So it's going to be specific, a specific goal that you have, and it's going to be measurable. This often involves things like your scope. So who are we looking to serve? Who do we want to serve as our customers? What is it specifically that we offer and where do we operate? So obviously for all of you, we're talking about New Mexico, right? Is it northern New Mexico? For some of you, it's Taos and Red River, right? For some of you, it's the whole state of New Mexico. Maybe you're reaching outside of New Mexico to get tourists from other places to come here. And so think about, where are we going to operate, both in a very specific geographic perspective, but also from the perspective of your technological operations, your supply chain. So think about how involved you are with each of those different parts of your organization. And then think about what is your advantage. So this is where strategy comes into play and where we actually get involved in implementing it. So I mentioned earlier, the outdoor recreation industry has seen an increase in the socio-cultural environment of people who are not as wealthy and people who are more blue collar workers and also more people of color. And so what we know from that is if we have people who aren't just the wealthy, the upper middle class, who have lots of free time engaging in this industry, let's think about there may be a huge opportunity here to have an organization that's built on a cost advantage, which means you essentially are providing a good value for a good price. And so we have a lot, and we know this in the industry, there are a lot of places that provide that differentiation advantage. We have the best products. We have the most knowledge about a certain thing. We are maybe, the sexiest, the coolest, the highest status, think Tesla, think Apple. These are the organizations that operate on a differentiation advantage. But guess what? It is very easy and not easy. I shouldn't say easy. It is also an extremely good strategy to focus on the other end of that spectrum. So guess what? Walmart also does really well. Amazon also does really well. And so those focus on a cost advantage where they're looking at providing something for a low cost to a large number of people. And so think about really, it's great to be sexy, right? We all want to be the next big thing. But if you actually want to do good for your shareholders and maybe even your community and get more people engaged, that cost advantage may be the way to go with what you're doing. So that's part of your sort of defining your strategy, is identifying here's our objectives, here's our scope, here's how we're going to operate, and here's our advantage. Now, how do we do that? We start at the top. So strategy takes place at 3 levels. You start with your corporate level, which has to do with setting your mission and your vision. You're going to decide what direction are we going, what businesses or what major business do we want to be in. You've already have this set, a lot of you, right? You may not have a clear vision or a clear mission. Again, I have supplements that I'm happy to share with you on how to define those to really help your organization stay focused. But this is where you set those. That competitive level is where you define your advantage. Okay, given that, this is the business that we're in. What's the best way to operate in this business? This is why you do an external analysis. This is why you understand what's going on in that general environment and that specific environment. So you know the opportunities and threats that are present that are going to help you decide which way is going to help us be more successful. Do people care about having something that is really uniquely fit to their needs? Or do people care more about being able to easily access something for a low cost? So those are sort of that basic decision on, should we be cost advantage or differentiation advantage? And then the bottom level, the functional level, this is where we actually get the work done. And this is often where strategy falls apart, which is a whole other lecture that I have. But implementation is where we put our ideas into action. So what do we have? What does our organization do well? What knowledge, what skills, what resources do we have that's going to help us get to that cost advantage? And those are going to be things like relationships with other organizations. Those are going to be like relationships with their communities. All of those things come into play here, but it also has to do with actually making or providing the service. How are you going to do that? And again, always keeping in mind those big objectives. So how do we actually do this and make it happen? A good way to start out, and this is just some homework for you if you want to do it, a good way to start out is to think about these things. So what do you believe? Right now, what do you think about your customers or your population that you're serving? What do you believe about where your industry is headed? What do you believe about your competition? And what you actually have within your organization. And when I say you, I mean your organization as a whole. So not you as an individual, but as an organization, what do you believe about all these? When you do your industry analysis and you actually go and look, if your beliefs are inaccurate, if there's evidence that they are inaccurate, modify your beliefs. Our external environment is difficult to change, not impossible, but difficult. So understanding it will help you make better decisions for your organization as a whole. It will help you anticipate threats and exploit opportunities before others can. So these are the things that you can do. And this is why strategic planning is an important part of organizations. This is why we do strategic planning. You need to know what you think and then see, were we right? If we weren't, let's adapt. You're always going to be adapting because things in your external environment are going to change. So you need to continuously pay attention to these things. So last but not least, a little bit about moving forward for your organizations, hopefully. So at each of those levels of strategy, the corporate, the competitive, and the functional, think about not just what are our financial objectives, right? What are our social justice objectives or our environmental justice objectives? Are we really trying, what are we trying to improve in our world, in our community? And that's one of the things that the New Mexico for Good program and SFI are really focused on and really supportive of. And I think we're in a good place in our state where those can be important objectives for your organization, everything that you do, and you have a lot of support for including those within your organization. Think about engaging your stakeholders. So not just your shareholders, not just your customers, right? But all of your stakeholders. You can do this and it will help you in your client and market development. It can help with funder and donor development. There's tons of resources out there that we might not know about because we haven't fully engaged all of our stakeholders. When you think about developing your organization and how it might be governed, think about the vision. So keep to that. Think about, this is what we want to do. We want to keep on having these ideas. Then finally, sorry, I see in the chat, just a couple more things in terms of your program and service development and delivery. Remember that it's okay to adapt. Things change, your external environment changes. Keep ahead of it and you can adapt quickly and respond quickly. And then always, always, always keep an eye, have measures, make sure you're measuring what you're doing. So with that, I will say, did we get a question from Sonia? Do you have a question? Sorry.
Well, and I'm not sure if this is a good place to bring this up, and I'm not, well, okay, so for us, like we're trying to capitalize on creating a location where people can skate outdoors, and on the like 39 million people took up roller skating during the pandemic.
Awesome.
Because it was it was the simplest thing for them to do.
Yep.
But once you get past your driveway, it's really hard to find places to roller skate. And so maybe combining forces with our outdoor stakeholders who would be interested in a location that people could roller skate, but someplace that we could use as a place to practice and to play games.
Absolutely. This is a great idea. I mean, this is where understanding all those stakeholders and all the different parts of your environment becomes really important, because you need partners, right? You need a space. And so identifying, maybe even, it might even be just other like-minded individuals, right? People who do want to be outdoors, but in an urban environment. So looking at other organizations that might provide that space. I don't know what that looks like. It might be skate parks. It might be parking lots. You know I live right by the airport in Albuquerque, and I know that the airport parking places were really hit hard during the pandemic. You know,
well, I can tell you that, well, that's an interesting idea, but most parking lots are not appropriate for roller skating.
Yes.
Yes. And roller and skate parks are fun, but they're not really for roller skating. So, I mean, they're for doing crazy stunts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So really just to put it out there, what we need is like an open space with a flat, boring, well cemented place, right? With a good floor. So, and it's hard to find that in Albuquerque, which is, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that and that's, one of the reasons why when you start looking outside of, the general and the things that come to top of mind, doing that industry analysis might help you. You might be able to find, I don't know, and I know nothing about roller skating, but in terms of the industry, I would think partnering maybe with empty warehouses that are suffering because of the supply chain backups, or partnering with even organizations that are involved with sort of outdoor activities, but in an urban environment. So having specific trails for roller skating and rollerblading, things like that might be an option for you. But looking outside of that, sort of those immediate thoughts, looking to further stakeholders might be a good way to help increase your access, maybe.
Right. And actually your conversation or your presentation did make me think about, there's a guy who's going to do an outdoor movie theater, and maybe partnering with him to put in a track at his space and then have a combined, outdoor recreation space.
Yeah, right. I mean, I can't imagine that somebody wouldn't want to try and diversify their revenue streams. It would make sense to me.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much for the question. Yeah. I know we're running a little short, but are there any other questions? I did see in the chat. I do think I tried to address Brian's question, but I'm happy to talk further too. But does anybody else have any questions at all? Thank you. Thank you all.
I think, Karen, you have, so the slides have Karen's email there, so feel free to reach out to her. She probably put one semester of classes in 1 hour, so you may have a few questions. So yeah, feel free to reach out to her or to me. We can follow up on any specifics. So any final comments, suggestions? Otherwise, we will move to our next session after a short break.